The morning was calm at JFK International Airport. People moved quickly, dragging their suitcases, buying coffee, and checking their phones. In the middle of the busy crowd stood Danielle Parker, a graceful black woman dressed in a stylish beige business suit. She looked calm, with her hair neatly tied back and a soft leather bag over her shoulder. She wasn't just any passenger. Danielle was a successful lawyer, smart and thoughtful, always respectful and humble. Her flight to San Francisco was scheduled for 9 a.m. She had flown many times before, but today was special. She was traveling for an important legal conference where she would be speaking as a guest of honor. She had prepared her speech for weeks. As she approached the first-class gate, the airline staff smiled and welcomed her, showed her ticket, and walked onto the jet bridge with quiet confidence. Inside the plane, the first-class section was nearly empty. Danielle reached her seat too. She placed her bag neatly in the overhead bin and sat down. The leather seat was wide and comfortable. She took a deep breath and looked out the window, thinking about her presentation. Just then, a tall white man in a pilot's uniform passed by her. He looked at her briefly, then muttered under his breath, "Another monkey in first class." Words weren't loud, but Danielle heard them clearly. So did the couple sitting nearby. Danielle's heart dropped. For a moment, she wasn't sure what to do. Her eyes widened slightly, but she didn't speak. Her lips pressed together, and she slowly sat back down. She didn't want to cause a scene. She looked at the flight attendants, hoping one of them would say something, but they remained silent. One seemed to have heard it, her eyes shifting awkwardly, but she said nothing. Danielle blinked, turned to the window, and tried to hold in the feelings rising inside her. She had faced racism before, but never like this. Not in such a calm, casual way. The pilot's voice had been cold, not angry.
"You're just dismissive."
As if her very presence in first class was a problem to him. She took a deep breath and reached for her phone. She didn't open social media. Instead, she opened her email. She typed a quick message, not full of anger, but clear and calm. She wrote what happened. She didn't even write the pilot's name, because she didn't know it yet. She hit send. The message went directly to one person, Jordan Parker, her husband. What the pilot's and the crew didn't know was that Jordan wasn't just her husband. He was the CEO of this very airline. Jordan had booked the same flight. He was running late because of a meeting at headquarters, but had texted earlier, "All board just before takeoff. Save me a smile." Danielle hadn't replied yet. Her hands were shaking just a little as she clutched the phone. She wasn't angry. She was tired. Within 10 minutes, Jordan walked onto the plane. He wore a blue blazer, jeans, and a quiet, confident smile. He waved quickly at a flight attendant and walked to seat 1A, which was just one row in front of Danielle's. As he passed the cockpit, the same pilot stood there, talking to a co-pilot. Jordan nodded briefly at them, and the pilot returned a polite smile. There was no sign that anything had happened. The pilot didn't know who Jordan was, or who he was married to. Jordan sat down and opened his laptop. He was used to flying for work. First class wasn't luxury for him, it was routine. As he buckled his seatbelt, he finally noticed Danielle sitting behind him. He turned, smiled, and gave her a little wave. She didn't smile back. That was strange. She leaned forward slightly and whispered across the seat gap, "Can I tell you something?" Jordan nodded in a calm, low voice. She repeated what the pilot had said. Just those words. Jordan's face changed immediately. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't say a word for a moment. He looked ahead, closed his laptop slowly, then opened it again and began typing. Danielle watched him. She didn't need to say more. Jordan opened the airline's internal staff portal. He looked up the flight's crew details. It took less than a minute to find the name. Captain Greg James. Jordan's fingers moved quickly. He wrote a direct message to the head of HR and copied the vice president of operations. He didn't include a long explanation, just facts. He attached Danielle's email and added one short sentence. "We need to speak the moment this flight lands. Suspend the captain immediately from all duties pending investigation." He hit send. The rest of the flight continued in silence. No one around them knew what had happened. The attendants served drinks, Passengers read magazines and watched movies. But something had shifted in the air, at least for Danielle and Jordan. Danielle stared out the window. The clouds outside were soft and glowing under the morning sun. She felt quiet, not sad, not angry, just still. She wasn't someone who looked for attention. She didn't post drama online. She had always believed in dignity, even in silence. But deep inside, something in her was tired of silence. Jordan sat upright, not watching a movie, not listening to music. He was waiting. The plane began to descend towards San Francisco. The flight was smooth. As the captain's voice came over the speaker announcing their landing, Danielle's eyes didn't blink. It was that same voice. It's that same man. The plane landed safely and taxied to the gate. Passengers stood, stretched, and began collecting their bags. The pilot stepped out of the cockpit to greet passengers at the front. As he moved forward, he stopped, because standing at the entrance to the plane was an airline manager holding a clipboard. She didn't smile. She leaned in and spoke quietly to him. His expression shifted from confusion to shock. His eyes widened. His body stiffened. Danielle remained seated. Jordan stood slowly and walked toward the front, standing just a few feet from the captain. "Captain James," he said. The pilot turned, surprised. "I'm Jordan Parker, CEO of this airline." The pilot looked stunned. His mouth opened slightly. Jordan continued in a calm voice. "You're being relieved of duty immediately. HR will follow up. But let me be clear, what you said to my wife this morning is unacceptable. You've disrespected our passengers, our company, and basic human dignity." The pilot tried to explain something, but Jordan raised one hand gently, signaling him to stop. "You've said enough," Jordan said. Passengers began whispering. Some were pulling out their phones. Others just stood quietly, watching a scene they never expected. Danielle slowly got up and walked to the front. Her face was calm, her shoulders straight. She stood beside her husband and said nothing. The pilot stepped off the plane, followed by the airline manager. Danielle and Jordan exited after him, walking quietly, side by side. The story was far from over. Would you like me to continue with part 2? The cabin lights were dimmed as the plane climbed into the bright morning sky. Danielle sat quietly, her gaze fixed on the window. Outside, the clouds looked like soft white pillows, drifting under the wing. She felt a strange quiet in her chest, as if her thoughts had settled into a calm lake. Beside her, Jordan remained focused, his laptop closed on his tray table. He folded his hands together and watched the aisle, waiting. No one around them guessed what had happened. Flight attendants moved up and down, serving coffee and juice. A child nearby giggled, pressing a toy to his ear. A business traveler typed on a tablet. The hush of the engines was comforting, a low hum that filled the space between people. Danielle held her phone in one hand. She stared at the screen where her sent email still lay open. She wondered if Jordan had seen. He had. She saw him glance. At her, gentle and steady, he nodded once, tiny but strong. That was all the answer she needed. Jordan looked out the window and took a steady breath. He closed his eyes for a moment, as if gathering strength. Then he opened his laptop again. His fingers moved, not in anger, but in careful purpose. He opened the company's internal portal. The interface looked crisp and neat. He typed the flight number, and a list of crew members appeared. Captain Greg James, First Officer Maria Liu, 2 flight attendants, ground staff. He clicked on Captain James's profile. Photo of a clean-shaven man with bright eyes smiled back at him. Jordan's heart tightened, but he remained calm. He printed the profile details mentally, then began composing another message. This time he wrote to the Vice President of Human Resources and the Chief Operating Officer. He laid out the facts plainly. Time, place, words spoken, he attached. A screenshot of Danielle's email, and he added, "Please prepare an immediate suspension from all flight duties pending full review. We will discuss this in person upon landing." He hit send. Danielle watched him type. She felt both relief and sorrow. Relief that action would come. Sorrow that hatred still lived in the world. She closed her eyes and let her breath fall into a steady rhythm. The plane surged forward, carrying them toward California. After a while, the flight attendants dimmed the lights completely. People leaned back, many drifting toward sleep. Danielle leaned her head against the seat and closed her eyes too. Rested his head against the window, his hands folded. Time passed loosely, measured only by the gentle bumps of the plane through clouds. Somewhere, someone in human resources was reading the messages. Within minutes, Jordan's phone buzzed. A single line, received. We'll meet at gate. HR, he did not respond. Did not need to. The plane was in motion. Danielle stirred, feeling the plane dip slightly as it began its descent. The flight attendant turned on the lights and walked down the aisle, checking seatbelts. Danielle sat upright, heart beating a bit faster. Jordan closed his laptop and put it away. His expression was calm, but Danielle knew his mind was working. When the plane touched down, there was a gentle cheer at the sound of the wheels on the runway. The captain's voice came over the speaker. Welcome to San Francisco. We hope you enjoyed your flight. That voice, Captain James's voice, sounded so ordinary. But to Danielle and Jordan, it carried weight they could not ignore. The plane slowed and came to a stop at the gate. Passengers stood, stretching arms and legs. Bags came down from the overhead bins, so the couple in the row ahead paid no attention to the drama unfolding. Everyone thought this was a normal flight, but it was not. The pilot stood up and opened the cabin door. He stepped forward to greet passengers. He saw Danielle and Jordan waiting, side by side. He paused, a slight crease on his forehead. He did not know what to say. Suddenly, an airline manager appeared at the front. Ms. Harris, a woman in her 40s with a clipboard in hand. Her heels clicked on the floor as she walked up to the pilot. She stopped a foot away from him and spoke. In a low voice, he leaned close and listened. His face went pale. His eyes darted left, then right. He swallowed hard. Passengers looked around, curious. A few slowed their exit to watch. Smartphones appeared, but no one spoke. Silence filled the cabin. The pilot's shoulders slumped. He looked at Danielle, then at Jordan. Pride and fear mixed in his gaze. Opened his mouth, but no words came out. Finally, he shook his head and nodded at Ms. Harris. Together, they stepped off the plane. Leaving the door open behind them, Danielle stood and walked forward. Her shoes made soft taps on the carpeted floor. Jordan fell in line beside her. Neither spoke. They did not need to. Their presence spoke clearly. Action and justice. Outside the plane, the terminal was bright and busy. Travelers moved toward baggage claim. But near the jet bridge, a small crowd formed. Airline staff whispered among themselves. A few took photos. Reporters with cameras and microphones waited at a distance. News had traveled fast. Somebody inside had texted the media. Jordan and Danielle paused at the top of the jet bridge. Stepped forward. Cameras clicked. Recorders turned on. A reporter shouted, "Mr. Parker, what happened on the plane?" Another asked, "Why did you fire the pilot?" Jordan raised a hand gently, and the reporters went quiet. He looked at Danielle for a moment. She gave a small nod. Her eyes were calm, but bright. Then Jordan turned to face the cameras. "Jordan Parker, CEO of this airline," he said in a steady, even voice. "This morning, a passenger my wife was spoken to in a degrading way by one of our captains. He used a hateful remark that no one should ever hear." He paused. "I demanded his immediate removal from duty, because respect and safety are our top priorities." The microphones leaned forward. Flashbulbs popped. Jordan stepped back and motioned to Danielle. She stepped into the space in front of the cameras. She stood tall, shoulders back, chin lifted. She had always been quiet in public, but today she spoke. "I am Danielle Parker," she said, voice soft but clear. "I have flown many times, but today I heard words that no person should ever hear. I felt small in that moment. I also felt hope because someone chose to act." She looked at Jordan. "Action is more powerful than words." Reporters scribbled notes. One shouted, "How do you feel now?" She let out a small breath. "I feel heard." and I feel determined that no one else should have to hear those words." The reporters stepped back. Jordan and Danielle turned and walked down the jet bridge, leaving the small crowd behind. Every step felt heavy, yet light. Heavy with the weight of what had happened, light with the hope that change could come. In the terminal lobby, they waited for their driver. Danielle leaned her head on Jordan's shoulder. He wrapped an arm around her. No words passed between them. They did not need them. Outside, the sun shone on the road. A black car pulled up. The driver popped the trunk. Jordan and Danielle slid into the back seat. The car merged into traffic. They held hands quietly. Inside the car, Jordan turned to Danielle. He spoke softly. "Are you okay?" She nodded. "Yes." She paused, then added, "Thank you." Jordan squeezed her hand. "Always." The driver glanced in the mirror. "Good morning, Mr. and Mrs. Parker. Welcome to San Francisco." His voice was polite, unaware of what had just happened. They thanked him as the city skyline came into view. Danielle looked out the window. Golden Gate Bridge in the distance, ferries on the bay, seagulls circling in the sky. She let out a gentle sigh. This was where she had to be today, at the conference. She straightened her shoulders. Jordan watched her. He felt a swell of pride, but also sadness that she had suffered hate. He would do everything he could to make sure the airline became stronger, kinder, more aware. They drove through the city streets, past bustling markets and palm trees. A new chapter was beginning for them, for the airline. For every passenger who might one day face prejudice and silence, Danielle closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them. She whispered, "Let's go." Jordan nodded. They stepped out of the car near the conference center. The driver smiled and wished them luck. Danielle and Jordan stepped toward the building, ready to face a new day. Behind them, the city moved on, but something had changed. Silent storm in the sky had broken, and now a brighter breeze blew. Danielle woke early the next morning in her hotel room. Through the window, she could see the tall buildings of San Francisco glinting in the sunrise. She lay for a moment under the soft sheets, thinking of yesterday's flight. The memory still felt sharp hearing that cruel word, feeling her heart sink, then seeing Jordan take calm action. She sat up and swung her legs over the side of the bed. Today, she had to speak at the conference. She had to turn her pain into power. She dressed in a simple but elegant dress. It was navy blue with sleeves that reached her elbows. On small pearl earrings and a pair of comfortable heels. Her hair was in the same neat bun as the day before. She looked at herself in the mirror. Her face was calm. Her eyes were determined. In the lobby, she met Jordan. He was already in his suit, holding 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to her with a gentle smile. "Good morning," he said. "You ready?" She took a sip. The coffee was warm and strong. She nodded. "Yes," she whispered. They walked together to the conference center. Inside, the large hall was filled with people. Lawyers, judges, students, journalists, and airline staff filled the seats. Banners hung from the ceiling. National Legal Forum, it read. At the front was a stage with a long table, microphones, and a podium. A woman named Ms. Rodriguez, the conference organizer, greeted Danielle with a hug. "We're so glad you're here," she said. "Are you okay?" Danielle nodded and squeezed her hand. The room hushes as the first speaker finishes. Then Ms. Rodriguez took the podium. "Next we have Ms. Danielle Parker," she announced. "She will speak on the topic of respect, equality, and how words can change lives." The audience applauded. Danielle walked to the stage. Her heart beat fast, but she did not show fear. She smiled at the crowd. She spoke in a clear, gentle voice. "Good morning. Yesterday, on a flight from New York to San Francisco, I heard a word meant to hurt me. That word was not mine to bear. It was thrown at me because of who I am. No person is a target for hate, and no person should have to face words that wound their soul." The audience listened in silence. She paused, looking at their faces. Some had tears in their eyes. She continued, "I chose not to stay silent. My husband, Jordan, is the CEO of that airline. He took swift action when he learned what happened. But this is not just my story. This is the story of all people who face cruelty in silence. She took a breath. Today I want to share how we can all stand up, speak up, and demand respect. For the next 20 minutes, she told stories. Stories of people who faced small slights every day. A woman who was talked over in meetings. A man who was ignored in a store. A child who was teased on the playground. She spoke of their pain and their courage. She spoke of how words can build or break someone. She spoke in simple English, but her words carried weight. Then she offered advice. If you witness hate, do not walk away. Speak up. If you see someone treated unfairly, offer kindness. If you hear someone use a cruel word gently but firmly, say it is not right. We are all responsible for each other. The audience nodded. Some people whispered, yes, yes. When she finished, the room erupted in applause. She smiled and stepped back. Jordan joined her on stage. He tapped the microphone. Thank you, Danielle, for your brave words, he said. I am proud of you, and I am proud of all of you who choose respect over hate. More applause followed. After the conference, reporters surrounded them. They asked questions about the airline's new policies. Jordan spoke about the zero-tolerance rule for discrimination. Said they would launch training programs for all staff. He said passengers would have better ways to report incidents. He spoke calmly and clearly, just as he did on the plane. Danielle added, I hope this story helps others find their voice. I pray that no one else has to suffer cruel words. Oh, but if they do, I hope they remember. You are not alone. The reporters nodded and thanked them. Later, in a small discussion room, Danielle joined a panel of experts on diversity and inclusion. She shared her experience again and answered questions from students and young lawyers. She spoke about how to build safe spaces. She spoke of how to listen with empathy. She spoke of how respect begins with a simple choice. Meanwhile, back at the airline's headquarters in New York, the news was still buzzing. Employees gathered around screens showing the conference video. Some wept. Some cheered. Airline managers held meetings about the new initiative. HR drafted messages to all staff. They would roll out an anonymous hotline, mandatory training, and review all customer feedback protocols. Captain Greg James, the pilot, learned that he was under investigation by the FAA. He met with his union representative. He asked what he could do to save his career. But the airline's board was firm. They would not tolerate hate. He realized that his actions had consequences far beyond a single flight. Back in San Francisco, Jordan and Danielle returned to their hotel. They sat in the lounge overlooking the bay. They held hands. Jordan looked at Danielle and said, You did well today. She nodded, but her eyes were tired. I'm glad I spoke, she said, but I wish no one ever had to. He squeezed her hand. She took a sip of water and closed her eyes. I am ready for rest, she whispered. He leaned in and kissed her forehead. We will rest, he said. Tomorrow is another day. That night they slept deeply. In her dreams, Danielle saw the faces of people she had never met, people who heard her words and felt less alone. She saw the pilot standing alone on the tarmac, thinking about what he had done. She saw flight attendants listening to new training. She saw passengers speaking up when they saw wrong. When she woke the next morning, the hotel room was quiet. She looked at her phone. Messages from colleagues, friends, and strangers filled her inbox. Many said they were inspired. Many shared their own stories. She felt a warm glow in her chest. Danielle turned to Jordan and said, Let's return home. He nodded. They packed their bags. At the lobby, they checked out. The bellhop carried their suitcases to a black car waiting. Outside, they climbed in. On the way to the airport, they passed murals on city walls. One showed a rainbow of faces, smiling and holding hands. Underneath, the words read, Respect changes the world. Danielle smiled. Jordan smiled back. At the airport, they checked in easily. Their flight was scheduled in 2 hours. They sat near the gate and watched people move around. Danielle thought of all the journeys ahead, both her own and those of countless others. She thought of hate words turning into hope. She thought of how action could follow words. Soon, the boarding call came. Jordan and Danielle stood. They walked to the gate together. As they stepped onto the jet bridge, they looked at each other and nodded. They knew the journey was not over. But they also knew they would face it together, with courage, with respect, and with the quiet power of simple words made strong by action. The return flight to New York was calm in a way Danielle and Jordan had never expected. As they stepped on board, the cabin smelled fresh, and the crew offered polite smiles. A new captain in a crisp uniform greeted them by name. "Welcome aboard, Mr. and Mrs. Parker." His voice was warm and sincere. Danielle caught Jordan's eye and gave a small nod. This flight felt different already. They found their seats and settled in. Jordan slipped his arm around Danielle's shoulders for a moment. She leaned in, grateful for his steady presence. A flight attendant brought them water and asked if they needed anything else. Jordan said, "Just a smooth flight, please." The attendant smiled broadly and said, "You got it, sir." As she walked away, Danielle thought, how small kindness can feel so big. The cabin filled quickly. Many of the same passengers who had been on the flight 2 days before returned. Some shared quiet nods with Danielle as they passed by. A few whispered, "Thank you for speaking up." Danielle smiled back. She felt a gentle warmth in her chest. Her decision to speak had rippled farther than she knew. Now Jordan closed his eyes and leaned against the window. He took a slow breath, mind moving through the events of the last days. He thought about the meetings he had with HR, the new training, modules he had approved, and the hotline he had asked IT to build. He thought of the full inbox of letters from passengers, crew members, and even strangers. Hope filled him. After takeoff, the new captain made an announcement. "Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is your captain speaking. On behalf of this airline, I want to thank you for your patience and your trust. We are committed to respect and safety for all our guests. Please enjoy the flight." His words felt genuine. A round of quiet applause followed. Danielle sat back and watched the clouds drift by. She remembered that first moment on the old flight, hearing the cruel word. Now words of respect floated around her. She reached for her notebook and began writing. She wrote about this flight, the change in tone, the power of action. She knew she would share these thoughts later in a blog post. Midway through the flight, a flight attendant approached them with a tablet. Miss Parker, she said, "I'd like to share feedback from the crew. Everyone wanted you to know how much they appreciate your stand. You'll feel proud to work here." Danielle and Jordan listened as she read messages of thanks and encouragement. Danielle felt tears prick at her eyes. She whispered, "Thank you," and pressed her hand to her heart. Jordan smiled. "Thank you for sharing," he said. "Please pass on my thanks to everyone." The attendant bowed and walked away. In that moment, Danielle saw the faces of the crew in her mind. Faces that had once looked away in silence, now lifted with pride. Later, the captain brought the plane to a smooth altitude, came into the cabin near Danielle's row. "Mrs. Parker," he said quietly, "thank you for your courage. You've changed so much because of you." Danielle looked up at him. His eyes were bright. "You helped us see what matters," he said. She smiled. "Thank you for listening," she replied. Around them, the cabin felt almost hushed. Passengers read magazines or naps. Some scrolled on phones. A mother soothed her baby. Yet beneath the routine, something had shifted. The air felt lighter, kinder. Jordan opened a news app on his phone. He scrolled through headlines. Airline's new respect policy draws praise. How one flight changed a company culture. Passengers rally behind CEO's wife. He tapped on an article and read aloud a line. "This shows that leaders can listen and act." Danielle nodded. "It's more than words," she said. "It's what we do next." As the flight continued, Danielle and Jordan talked quietly about their plans. They would return home to New York and join the airline's new task force on inclusion. They would attend a meeting with board members next week. They would meet survivors of discrimination invited by the company. They would press forward. In the back of the cabin, a group of passengers gathered around a laptop. They watched the conference video. A man whispered, "She was so brave." A woman nodded. We need more of that in our world. Danielle felt a soft smile. She closed her eyes and breathed in the gentle hum of the engines. Change was in motion. When the captain announced the beginning of the descent, Danielle and Jordan prepared to land. The plane dipped smoothly. Below them, the patchwork of fields and roads gave way to the city lights. Danielle slipped her hand into Jordan's. Thank you, she said softly. He kissed her fingers. Thank you for trusting me with your story, he replied. The plane touched down gently. On the tarmac, ground crews waved. Cameras from a local news crew rolled as the plane arrived at the gate. Reporters waited, but this time they were there for a different reason, to hear from the new captain. To ask about the policy changes, to understand how one moment could reshape a company. Jordan and Danielle stepped off the plane. The crew lined the jet bridge, clapping softly. Flight attendants, pilots, and staff gave them smiles and waves. Danielle felt a lump in her throat. She raised her hand in thanks. Outside the terminal door, a small crowd had formed. Airline staff held signs reading "Thank you" and "Respect matters." Danielle's eyes widened. Jordan pulled her close. They did this? Shh, she whispered. He nodded. Because of you. She looked at the signs, at the people cheering quietly. She felt a deep, warm glow. This is bigger than me, she said. This is us. They walked through the crowd. Passengers came up to thank them. Some cried, some shook their hands, some simply smiled, tears in their eyes. Danielle spoke gently. Thank you for your kindness. Jordan added, we are all in this together. The crowd cheered softly again. They reached the exit where their car was waiting. Before getting in, Danielle turned back. The line of crew members stood shoulder to shoulder. She raised her hand. In a small wave, they waved back. Jordan stood beside her, proud. She felt a gentle strength. This was indeed bigger than her or any one person. It was a new beginning. Inside the car, Danielle leaned back and closed her eyes. The city lights flickered outside. She thought of the pilot who had uttered those cruel words. She thought of how he might feel now, alone on the tarmac. But she also thought of the many who had chosen empathy over hate. She thought of the people whose hearts had changed. Jordan reached over and took her hand. You did it, he said. Today we all did it. Danielle nodded. Yes, she said. Today we all did it. They held hands as the car drove into the night, ready to face whatever came next with the quiet power of their shared story. Ask ChatGPT. The months after that flight passed in a blur of new beginnings and small triumphs. At the airline's headquarters in New York, meetings filled the calendar. Jordan and his leadership team worked side by side with the HR department, drafting new policies that stressed respect above all else. They created an easy reporting system where any passenger or crew member could speak a PAN, anonymous hotline, a simple app, or a quick email. They made clear that every report would be taken seriously and handled quickly. Danielle joined the effort, sharing her story in training videos and workshops. She spoke softly but firmly, reminding everyone that words have power. She told them how one slur had shaken her and how one act of leadership had changed everything. Her calm voice echoed in small conference rooms and in large auditoriums. She answered questions honestly, sometimes pausing to gather her thoughts, sometimes bursting into gentle laughter when someone asked a light question. People listened. At first, some employees felt uneasy. They wondered if the changes were too strict. They worried about speaking up against friends or colleagues. But as the weeks passed, they saw the world shift around them. Pilots, flight attendants, ground staff all took part in new workshops that taught empathy, encouragement, and respectful language. Role-playing exercises helped them practice speaking up gently when they heard something wrong. They learned how to listen without judgment, and how to apologize sincerely when they made mistakes. Passengers began to notice too. On many flights, attendants announced the new policy at the start. Welcome aboard. Our airline is now committed to respect and dignity for all. If you need anything or if you see something askew, please let us know. These announcements were met with nods and smiles. Some travelers thanked the crew for the update. One afternoon, Danielle and Jordan hosted a panel at a major diversity conference in Chicago. The hall was packed. People stood in aisles. Danielle told the story again, but this time she focused on broad lessons, how hate can hide in a whisper, and how courage can begin with a single message sent on a phone. Jordan spoke about corporate responsibility, how companies must not only profit but also protect dignity, explained the new programs, the hotline, the training, the public reports. They released quarterly summaries that showed how many reports came in, how quickly they were handled, and how many resolutions were reached. The transparency pleased many. Students at business schools studied the case. Journalists wrote articles praising the airline's swift action. The CEO and his wife became unexpected advocates for workplace kindness. They received invitations from universities, nonprofits, and government agencies to speak on panels and at workshops. Their lives felt busier than ever. Meanwhile, word reached Captain Greg James, the pilot who had used the cruel word. His name had become public, fought to keep his job, meeting with union leaders and FAA officials. But the airline's board stood firm. They had promised zero tolerance. The FAA began its own review. The pilot's license was suspended pending further training. He wrote a short formal apology letter, but it came too late for many. His reputation, once solid, had cracked. Back at home, Danielle and Jordan found moments of quiet. They still lived in their cozy house near Central Park. With 2 loyal dogs and a small balcony full of potted plants, they cooked dinners together, took walks around the reservoir, sometimes just sat in silence, warmed by each other's presence. Life felt precious and fragile. They knew that change in the wider world was slow, but they also knew that their actions had sparked something real. One evening, as autumn leaves fell in golden piles on the sidewalk, Danielle opened her laptop and read a message. It was from a young flight attendant in Denver. She wrote, "Thank you for speaking up. I used to stay silent when I heard rude comments. But now I remind myself that I have a voice too. Because of you, I filed my first report last week. It led to a training session that helped our team understand each other better." Danielle felt tears in her eyes. She typed back, "Thank you for your courage. Your voice matters." Across the country, similar stories arrived by email. A mechanic in Texas said he had quietly faced disrespect on the shop floor end. Now he and his coworkers had their own meeting to talk about respect. A ground staff member in Seattle wrote that she and her team organized a kind words board where employees posted notes of thanks and encouragement for each other in London. The airline's sister branch heard of the change and adopted similar policies. The ripple from that single flight carried across borders and oceans. Danielle and Jordan saw how one moment painful and unfair could become a source of growth and unity. 1 year after that flight, the airline held a celebration at a small hangar near Newark Airport. The mood was festive. String lights hung from the rafters. A jazz band played softly. Colorful banners proclaimed "Respect takes flight." Employees from every department came with their families. There were booths for the new anonymous hotline, for the training modules, for stories of respect. Danielle and Jordan arrived together, greeted by applause. On a raised platform, Jordan stepped up to a simple microphone. He spoke from the heart. 12 months ago, a moment of hate led to a moment of change. Today we celebrate not just our profits or our planes, but our people. Every voice here matters. Every kind word matters. Respect is not a policy. It is our way of life. Crowd cheered. Then Danielle stepped forward. The lights shone gently on her face. She looked at the people she had come to admire, the attendants, the pilots, the mechanics, the office staff, the ground crews. She spoke softly. "Thank you for listening. Thank you for growing. Thank you for believing that respect can change our world, one flight at a time." The audience rose, clapping and whistling. Some wiped tears from their eyes. After the speeches, people mingled. Danielle talked with attendants who had once been silent, now willing to speak up. They shared stories of small victories like gently correcting a rude passenger or standing up for a coworker who looked different. Jordan answered questions about future plans, new apps to translate reports into multiple languages, partnerships with diversity organizations, support for community projects. As the evening wound down, Jordan and Danielle stood outside near a sleek new jet painted white and blue. The moon shone on its tail. The couple held hands. Jordan kissed Danielle's cheek. She rested her head on his shoulder. "It's been quite a journey," he said. She nodded. "Yes, it has." She paused, then looked up at the plane. "This," she said, "is just the beginning." He smiled. "Yes, we'll keep going." They turned and walked toward the hangar doors, ready for whatever came next. Their story had begun with a hateful whisper in first class, and it had grown into a powerful chant for change. One woman's strength, one partner's leadership, one company's promise to do better, all woven together in a quiet revolution of respect. And as the engines of that white and blue jet hummed softly in the night, they seemed to say, "Change can fly, and it can soar."